Greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Today we are discussing peak oil with John Peach, Iver Lofving, and several others. Iver had three things to tell us: El Nino, distillate inventories, and the inevitable recession or inflation. Iver, did you want to do a little presentation on
Sure.
that? Okay, go ahead.
Sure. I can elaborate a little bit. Well, these are all three things that people really can't argue about because they're sort of already in progress. And I think, people will, like you can almost, I'm just being optimistic. You can almost make people understand these things because it's actually happening. I don't know. Talking to people, forget it. Most people like, la, 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 la. What are you saying? But, first of all, El Nino, basically, El Nino is warm water in the Pacific, and it shows up usually around Christmas, hence the name El Nino, because it's like the Christ child. It's the time that it shows up. And they noticed it in Peru and Chile. They noticed that there's this big blob of warm water, and then all of a sudden everything changes. And we've been in a La Nina, believe it or not, for the last 4 years. I'm not sure it was 4 years, but quite a few years, which is unusual for a La Nina. But I think it's sort of switching into neutral. And if it's anything like what usually happens, sometime around next Christmas, along comes El Nino. And with El Nino, usually it means the world temperature goes up by 0.5 degree Celsius. So that could be a degree Fahrenheit. And, these are things that just happen. So it's not like some pie in the sky sort of thing. This is a very realistic scenario that could actually happen. And 0.5 degree Celsius is a lot. It's an instant jump to a different sort of a temperature regime. So, we've been having these wildfires and all this kind of crazy stuff happening. And it just could really juice it all up. So, and then my other thing is, and this is not, I'm not making it up either. Distillate inventories are down pretty much around the world. And I know they're down by about 1/4 in the United States. Now, the thing about that is it's basically the stuff they have in storage. So they like to have a bunch in storage. I think it's 165 million is the normal amount you want to have in storage because, you got to keep the trains running and agriculture going and everything, right? And we're only like 125, 120. So we're down at the beginning of it all. And that's the United States. And I think the idea is that, you're kind of running lean, you're sort of starting out with not that much. And, of course, you have to plant crops. You have to keep everybody flying around, which I think is the most insane thing ever. And you have to kind of keep the trucks running and, of course, the trains. So I noticed on TV lately, they're still pushing flying heavily, but at the same time, they're doing their little air scare thing, which shows all the, near misses and different things that are happening up in the sky. So maybe that's an attempt to get people out of the sky a little bit, but it isn't working. And I think that they basically, the article I read about it said that this will either lead to inflation, is almost inevitable because you have to charge more for the distillates, for the diesel and all those things. You have to charge more, basically demand destruction to get any kind of demand destruction to happen, or it could cause a recession. So, it could be both. It could be inflation, a bout of inflation again because it goes up, and it could be that causes a recession. But all these things, all those three things are sort of baked in the cake. They're definitely going to happen. Something is going to happen because of those three. So it's not just like running around, saying the sky is falling. These are things that are actually already in the works. Now, maybe we're going to pump more oil and make more diesel happen and stuff, but certainly not in the United States because I think we have, what do we have? Light sweet crude down in Texas. And then we're trying to mix it with other stuff, make it work. So I don't know if we're going to be able to get enough distillates to pump that up. And I think they have a way of this is my last little bit. They have a way of kind of making things seem like they're just normal by pushing out the same amount of stuff every day or every month, the same amount. And so everything seems fine to most people because the same amount of stuff is being pushed out there. And I noticed that, they stopped drawing down the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, but Biden just decided to pull another 26 million barrels out of the SPR, which basically keeps things normal during February, March. So I don't know what's going to happen after this, if they're going to keep drawing it down, but we're basically at exactly half or a little less than half of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that we had. So we really can't do it for more than about another 175 days, at 1 million barrels a day. So I don't know what the plan is, but I think it'd be nice if we kind of had a plan, and it'd be nice if we could, kind of ratchet down the amount that we're pulling out of storage. But, I don't know. I mean, you can live off of savings only so long, and then all of a sudden you have to get a job. Anyway.
Yeah.
What I got. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did anyone want to comment on that or add to it? Or,
yeah. So, the inflation that I saw something that said that the companies are running on such sort of tight schedules, right? That everything is just in time. That the Fed really doesn't have control over inflation the way they used to, and so even though they're raising interest rates, it's almost impossible for them to keep it down. And so, it may be really out of control at this point.
You mean regarding the interest rates?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because there's less energy, and so it's inevitable that on a petrodollar, you're going to buy less petro with each dollar when there's less petro.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I know also Doone had a question. Would you like to say it now, Doone? If you're there.
This is Phil Woodard. You were talking to me then, right?
Oh, Phil, sure. Yeah, you have a question? Go ahead.
I don't have a question. Well,
oh, okay. Or you want to say something? Go ahead.
Actually, yeah, I do have some thoughts on the peak oil thing. But the first thing is, for comic effect, I wanted to tell everyone that right now, this moment, our furnace isn't working. Mm-hmm. And we called the furnace repairman, and he's coming out here hopefully within about an hour right now. So peak oil right now is in the Woodard home. So okay, besides that though, just that as we started to run our course here and things envelope and cascade up into different levels, I looked at the gas prices today, and I think it was $3.49 here around about Lansing, Michigan, where I live. And diesel, I think, was $4.29. And it used to be a couple of years back, in 2008, more than a couple of years. But when they had that big hiccup there, $4 was an astronomical amount. $3, I think, for gas, Aline, was an astronomical. At these levels, and we have become inured to these levels of these prices, and now we're oh, well, that's okay. I'll just pay more for gas, and I'll just keep driving the way I want to. And we've acclimated the frog in the boiling water type routine. And
right.
So, okay, that's the end of my speech.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, for sure. Things are gradually getting more expensive, and people are acclimating. And I know Iver Lofving mentioned the demand destruction is one of the things that's helping to lower the gas prices. but at the same time, industry sectors are shutting down, and so we're kind of there's less stuff going around, and so many of the things that we need in order to keep the system going are kind of like not being produced, or less of them are being produced. So yeah, I know we had also someone was asking, Louis Nuens wanted to know what are best pathways to degrowth. Anybody wanted to chip in on that?
Yeah, so I've been wondering. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say, stop having babies.
Well, that's I have heard that a lot from many people. However, there's also people that are talking about the problems of demographic collapse. And so when people stop having babies, what ends up happening is that you end up having too many old people and not enough young people to take care of them. And a lot of economists agree that this is a non-sustainable situation, and that because those older people will not have anyone to take care of them. And so you definitely still need to have children in order to have a future. Okay, John Peach?
Yeah, so besides that, I mean, what happens if there really is a degrowth movement? Then basically that means that people stop buying stuff that they're normally buying, right? And then there's just sort of this cascade, I think, that that would force people out of work. And I don't know that there's a real clear path for degrowth any more than there's a path for growth, right? It almost seems like we're really stuck with either way. Just thought, but I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any kind of good solution. It just kind of seems like it's more like a forced collapse is what we're headed for.
Right. Yeah. In many ways, you're right. Like, I think I know I've read that from John Michael Greer, that as we get into this like latter stage of civilization, there is a senescence of the hierarchy, where they become increasingly disconnected from the reality, and it becomes difficult to coordinate everyone together to do anything, because there's a large number of lobby groups and everyone is pulling in their own direction, and so you end up having kind of a stagnation of new ideas. That's why large companies mostly function by buying up. Their innovation is buying up little startups, because little startups are able to have innovation, whereas a large corporation or a large government cannot, because they need stability. And so in that sense, definitely. But I do believe there are paths to degrowth, like sustainable degrowth, such as, for example, having, like, say, a pilot project in an area of giving people enough land to grow their own food and firewood, and then creating sustainable sized villages of 300, things that we know work in like India. We just like scale it for the climate that it is. So you would need like more land per capita in, like, say, Canada than you would in like tropical India. So yeah, I do think it's possible, but it would have to be kind of tried in like a smaller area, and then if it works, then it could be done in other areas as well. And like I did read those books, The Mass Dreams of the Future, where they talked about the 4 main timelines, and so one was the urban timeline, where people lived underground in kind of a Space Force kind of thing, where basically they were wearing military uniforms and doing whatever the military told them to do, and they would eat like synthetic food, and then they couldn't go outside because the environment had been destroyed. And this was one of those like RCP 8.5 scenarios where they had used all the minerals, destroyed the climate, and then so if you disobeyed, you would be sent outside in a leaky spacesuit, and so the number one cause of death was asphyxiation. So their average life expectancy was 52, and then the second kind of lifestyle was the rustic or the Mennonite, old order Amish style, where they're tilling the ground like with animal labor and that kind of stuff. But that's a very energy intensive kind of way of life. But they were on the surface, and there was still plants and stuff. But there, because of how hard it is to do tilling every year, and that kind of animal husbandry, their average life expectancy was 57, and they reported as working themselves to death most of the time. And then there was the third type, was the kind of what they call the survivalist or the indigenous lifestyle. And what was happening there is basically people living out kind of in what we'd call forest or untamed wilderness, and in a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. But a hunter-gatherers only need to work 3 to 4 hours a day, so they actually average 71-year life expectancy. And then the fourth, which was also the best, was where it was a kind of a hybrid between the indigenous and the Mennonite kind of way, where they were had lived in groups, but instead of tilling, they grew food forests, which was like nuts and trees, fruits and bean trees. And so because they could get all of their food from trees and shrubs and perennials, they didn't have to do as much backbreaking labor. And so their average life expectancy in 2100 was 89. And then by 2500, it was 99. And then after that, it was measured in centuries. So it is possible to do. Anyways, Alex?
Yeah, I think the pathway to degrowth is going to be kind of what John Michael Greer describes as a stair-step triage of various energy consuming sectors. And lately I've thought about the implosion of Bitcoin as kind of an indicator, a massively energy intensive business that really doesn't produce anything. It's just, vaporware. So hopefully, in a more logical society, we'd probably look around and figure out the parts of our industrial ecosystem that is really inefficient, like maybe corn-based ethanol. Get rid of it. It's not efficient. It's got too many positive feedback loops that are, hurting farmers and hurting our food production, and, get rid of the stuff that doesn't make sense. I would argue that AI is kind of headed that way. We've got, massive vaults of supercomputers running 24/7 to generate artificial blog posts and, fake art. It's just ridiculous, some of the things that, purely because there's a vested corporate interest in making a profit, they really ultimately don't contribute to our society in a meaningful way. They're just kind of propping up the various systems, or keeping Wall Street happy, or keeping various lobbying groups happy. And so I would hope that in a logical society, we'd kind of look at those things, the low-hanging fruit, and strategically say, hey, we're running out of energy. What's the best way that we can do what John Stuart Mill suggested was, the maximum benefit for the maximum number of people, rather than these, catastrophic loopholes where people are just doing it because it makes money. That's a wild fantasy of mine. I live in America, so it's not going to happen. But I would hope that as the system kind of collapses organically, that we'll see some kind of attrition and triage on a scale like that, where we, instead of just going off the cliff all at once, we kind of snip off these various sectors that are just wildly inefficient and stupid.
Yeah. That's a great point, Alex. I wanted to give a chance for John, Iver, and others to speak on that. Like, what sectors do you think are the most kind of expendable or the most likely to shut down as energy resources dwindle? First, okay.
Well,
Iver, you're.
Goes. No, I'd like to say I think one of the most inefficient and craziest things is the fact that everybody's still flying around everywhere to kind of Disneyland. And I was thinking, I had another like sort of a little analogy that I kind of was thinking about the other day. I kind of wrote it down here. I was thinking it's kind of like, we're all kind of living in this amusement park, and how the amusement parks used to have this sign that said you must be this tall to ride the ride. Well, I was thinking, what they should have is a big sign that says you must be this rich to fly, to ride this ride, right? And everybody just wants to take the trip to Umbria or wherever the heck they're going to, because that's what you do. You kind of like, you look in the catalog, you see the Viking cruises or something, and you just like aspire to that, and that's what you do. And I wonder how long they're going to keep that going. And I was thinking, in my darkest thoughts, I think they'll keep it going right on through, as most people they can't heat their houses, they can't drive a car, can't do anything. They're going to be people still kind of flying around and things. And I think that's going to I think that's going to be one of the things that continues. But then I also kind of think that they're doing a concerted job right now on the morning news and different things, the sort of infotainment channels, of scaring everybody about flying. They're saying, okay, we have this happening, or somebody's going to get, people get killed, etc. So they're kind of trying to like scare everybody. Well, like the COVID epidemic, I don't know, I'm not going to speculate on whether it was real or not, but it definitely scared everybody out of the air for a while. And that kind of gave us a little reprieve, especially also in the amount of energy we were using for a year or two. So I kind of think they're going to have to figure something like that out pretty soon, because, I can't see what happens when the beginning of the driving season starts and all these different things. I don't really know. But I kind of hope that, in my, hopeful mind, I kind of hope that we figure out some way of kind of like slowing down a little, like just chill a little. But I don't think that's not our nature. We don't do that. We're going to go full speed into the wall. So, and watching.
John, did you have an industry in mind that you thought is the kind of best candidate?
Traffic helicopters, they should go.
yeah. Oh, that reminds me. I was just thinking about how right now, this time where we're still kind of close to peak oil, we're having some of the most ridiculous kind of energy expenditures, like the Freedom Convoy, where there were all these truckers that came over, and it was like the huge, and I was just thinking, like, while it was happening, I'm like, they all need so much fuel, and they're all getting together for this huge fuel party at the peak of the fuel. And then they're doing that in Denmark as well. And then related to the helicopters, I just saw this guy in the American military, and then he decided to get on top of the helicopter spinning blades, and then got and then gave the thumbs up, and they spun it up, and then the helicopter blades just like flew off, and it's just like that's a kind of death that is impossible in like a low energy world. So it's only thanks to that. But yeah, John or anyone else, did you guys have any other ideas? What industries may be the first to kick the can as it was?
So the other way to look at this is what can we almost not do without, right? Or what won't we do without? And obviously, food is going to take a high priority. We're going to need water. So that means that there's got the pumps have to keep running and so forth. And then you just have to maintain shelter of some form and the warmth for that shelter. So there's kind of that other extreme is what will we really not give up versus what is the stupid stuff that we ought to be giving up. And what happens to all, again, what happens to all of the people that are working in the stupid jobs, right? We don't really need Disney World, but there's a lot of people working there, and it's keeping them alive and happy, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, well, that's a good point in terms of like I think that we have to move away from the job slavery, wage slavery model, if we were to have a sustainable transition, and then move more to kind of a land-based model, like not necessarily serfdom, but where because serfs were tied to the land, but but at least they had land, and so they actually worked half as much as we do now. But if we gave people land but then didn't force them to live there, I think that would be a good improvement. And so if they have a job or whatever in the city, that's fine, they can do that. But if they lose their job, they can always go back to their land, which is big enough to grow all of their food and all of their firewood. And so they I think that a lot of people would be a lot happier, and we'd have a lot fewer kind of, Bill Gateses in the world who never feel like they have enough because of insecurity or whatever. Okay. So anyone else want to chip in on this topic? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to say that one of the new jobs that's going to become dominant is farming. Like I think it's like something like 1% or 0.1% of the population of farming, growing food, and mostly that's done by fossil fuels. So it's going to go back to human labour. So a lot of those jobs, the bullshit jobs in the city that you're talking about, Iver, they're going to have to be done by people going back to the land, and farming will be the new big craze.
Yeah.
As far as degrowth is concerned, a good set of terms is it going to be by design or by disaster? And I honestly don't think that it can be done by design until disaster occurs, and we're not at that stage yet, but it must be coming pretty soon.
Right.
So do you think the disaster will strike and then we'll go to some form of design, or?
Well, I think people will emerge out of the disaster with some sort of new plans, and to me that will be I'd like to see quite a long way in the future that countries won't exist, that we will sort of contract down to regional areas that are operating as somewhat independent and capable of commuting within that zone and rather unconnected to other zones nearby, and so there won't be any governmental system at all beyond that regional area. and that'll be a long way off. And I don't know what the population of the world will be when we're doing that. Probably a lot less than what it is now.
Yeah, I actually in that Mass Dreams of the Future, they said that it was more or less like what you say there, because the population was so much lower. It was 94% population decline from the 1980s, and so it was about somewhere between 300 and 800 million people left alive by 2100. But it did rebound. I think they had 30% population growth, or something like 30% of the people that they had in the 1980s by 2500. But it was a lot more of the timeline or the lifestyle that had the most growth was the New Age Sylvan, where they had the food forests, because I guess it's long-term sustainable. Since once you've planted a food forest, there's not that much maintenance. You can just plant another one, and then plant another one, and then you have a baby. You plant a food forest for that baby, and by the time that they're full grown, that they're all ready. Mm-hmm. All right. So, Alex, you wanted to chip in?
I see somebody else has their hand up.
Oh, Phillip? Yeah, I'm not sure. He's had his hand up for a while, but Phillip, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Sure, I made a list.
Oh, great.
Just in response to what people have said there, what Alex talked about with the Bitcoin and the imaginary Bitcoin world, and I want to draw back to one of the basic themes from the Crude Awakening film, in which there's like an investor sitting back and he's going, "We have to look at things in reality," and he says, "Which is more real, money or oil? A piece of paper or a cup of oil?" Which is self-evidentiary to us, because it's like, well, obviously oil. Okay. I'm going to come back to that theme here in a minute about illusion. But my next topic is flying. I still fly occasionally, but not that much. I think anyone that's working on their farm or whatnot, I think that's a very good and sound and positive thing to do. I don't really have a farm, and I'm not really quite doing that, and I still fly, but not that much. My wife and I, we did fly to Hawaii 2 times over the course of 4 years. I have driven out to Gettysburg from Michigan, so I still take my vacations. Yeah, I just wanted to say that because there's mixed people of doing different things, and on that same issue of farms and whatnot like that, people growing their food, people growing their forest. About 7 years ago, I took a little vacation trip. Here is Michigan. I hope you can recognize it there. And up here is Mackinac City, where they had a fort. The British had a fort, and Mackinac City Fort. And when I spoke with one of the tour guides there, he said that at one point in their development, they had taken away so much wood that the surrounding area for 30 miles was devoid of hardwoods of mature growth. And I was astonished when he said that. And obviously there were small trees and budding trees and thin trees, but he said that for the most part, most of the big heavy wood had been cut within a 30-mile radius. And that might give reason to why the Indians were nomads for the most part. Okay, I'm looking at my notes again here. Okay, then. On the issue again of illusions, because I've taken this trip with my son to Detroit to take him to a concert. This is quite a while ago. We're driving down Woodward Avenue, which is not related to me. My name is Woodard, not Woodward. In any case, I'm driving around and I look around, and it's like I irritated my son because I said, "Look, take your choice of a losing. Over here on this side is a whole row of churches. Over here on this side is a whole row of bars and drug depots. Okay, look on ahead. We have the nail salon, the tattoo shops, more illusions, and particularly in regards to what you guys have said, Alex and Iver and John, that those jobs would just disappear completely. And those people that do those jobs will be woefully, woefully unprepared. So yeah, it's a big mix-up of people in these jobs, and they're feeding the solution. Oh, look at my nails. Ooh, look at my tattoo. And okay, I'm just about done. Okay, there was a gentleman in our last session that was talking about how the world is going to collapse and everybody should do what they think they want to do. And I interpreted that to mean do whatever you want to do. Have fun. You better do it right now. And I think that's kind of what his words were, was do whatever you want right here, right now. So I just wanted to comment that my birthday was December 15th. I turned 68 years old. I'd wanted to play saxophone for a while, but then I gave it up as too cost intensive. But my wife and my daughter surprised me with an alto saxophone on my birthday. And so I've been playing alto saxophone in a fairly good fashion with a pretty good teacher ever since then. And I'm just doing what I want, what I like. Back to you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you raised some good points there. One thing that I remember that I think could work in terms of options for flying in the future is those two-stroke motors with like a wing, or a parachute. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's like basically a one-person flyer, and then you've got like this big propeller behind you with a two-stroke motor, and then you're off and flying, and that could make postal carriers or whatever possible. But yeah, the idea is basically ultralight, small. Could work if we go with like biodiesel from like acorn trees or some kind of nut trees to get the oil from them, and then turn that into biodiesel.
Yeah. Can I say a couple things?
Go ahead, Iver.
First of all, Mackinac Island used to be Michilimackinac, and it was owned by the French for a long time. And it was kind of like the secret to getting on to the rest of the Great Lakes, that if you controlled that point at the top of, Lake Michigan and Huron. You would know better than I do, right, Andrii? You control all the way around to where Chicago is. You also, it's the same level as where Andrea lives up in the Georgian Peninsula up there, Georgian Bay. You basically, that was the pinch point. They controlled everything. So they stuffed it with, they had a whole lot of military forces there. And of course, I'm sure they were burning lots of wood. So, I mean, once you put a whole bunch of people up there and you set them up there for, 100 years, they're going to dig out they're going to get every piece of wood within 30 miles, And, that's what people don't realize is, like, I lived in Guatemala for 2.5 years, and, you rarely saw a squirrel. You rarely saw hardly, not that much wildlife. Things are exploited really pretty heavily, and they have to be because people are living off of the land, kind of. I used to occasionally eat a squirrel on a stick, which they would do is they'd roast it kind of over a fire, and then they'd sell it to you, the squirrel on a stick, and you'd kind of chew on its little head. Anyway,
yeah,
it was crazy. It was like wild to be in that place. But I've been telling my my students, some of my students, I told them, the best thing you can get as a young person is the most hammered woodlot you can find, totally whacked. I mean, like almost everything taken off of it that's any use. because what you have as a young person is you have time. We bought our woodlot when we were like 40, and then we held it until we were 60 something, right? And we managed to do a couple harvests, and you have time and stuff. But as a young person, you can develop a sugar bush. You can do a lot of things with a small woodlot, and it's useful to an actual person now because you cut wood and you can heat your house, and you can grow like things like shiitake mushrooms, and there's a number of different things you can do to kind of make it into a food forest. And of course, you can do maple sugaring and end up with something that you could sell. And then at the end of 20 or 30 years, you end up having enough wood that you can actually sell the wood off of the land and, pay yourself back taxes, etc. So it's a really good investment. Woods is a great investment. That's what I have to say.
Yeah. That's a good point. And that was another thing I wanted to mention in terms of there are sustainable ways of growing wood, and all of basically both England or the British Isles and Japan figured out the same system, which is coppicing and or pollarding. So coppicing, pollarding is considered the better option, but coppicing is when you have a growth and then young growth of wood, and then you cut it at the bottom, and then it grows again because it's young, and it's for like willow and poplar and many others can be coppiced that way. Now pollarding is a little bit different. You just cut it a little bit higher above browse height of deer or rabbits, so they don't eat the little shoots, and then you have even better production, and that's exactly what they do in Japan, and the majority of wood in Japan, that's exactly how it's produced. And so and Mackinac Island, I had a look, and it's in the middle of the right between Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, which is really like if you were to consider it one lake, because it has like a 20-kilometer stream in between it, or whatever. It's all the same level. So if you consider it one lake, then it's the largest of the Great Lakes, rather than Lake Superior. But yeah, definitely, if anyone that's interested in transition, the getting some land is definitely the way to go, especially near some other people that have land. Okay, so we had a few more questions from people. At what stage of collapse do you think the internet will go down permanently? And speculation on 2023 and how long we can keep up the semblance of normality. We've got a few minutes. Does anyone want to tackle any of those? Phillip? Okay. Or does anyone have any predictions for 2023? You guys can just unmute and say, because I can't see your screen.
Alex has his hand up there, so let's.
Okay, yeah, Alex, just go ahead, because I can't see you.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, I think the internet is also an interesting, extraneous, and disposable thing at this point. You look at all the energy that is pumped into social media and all the these cloud storage systems that are just filled with billions of cat photos and selfies from 1999 or whatever that people are storing forever, 24/7, using huge amounts of energy. In the Pacific Northwest, we have hydropower, and when the aluminum plants here all shipped over to Asia because the labor costs were too much, the power source immediately shifted to Microsoft and Amazon and these other giants, Facebook, so that they could power up these giant servers in warehouses 24 hours a day, air conditioned. and constantly being replaced and updated, with microchips and new technology. So I look at the entirety of the internet, and certainly I use it every day. We're using it right now, and it's a miracle and it's awesome, but it's such a complex system, and just the interconnected aspects of it, whether it's 5G and wireless, or all the cable connections, and just the huge amounts of technology that go into it. And now with AI, and I can't imagine it surviving the first couple of rounds of traumas once we start, really hitting the wall. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when it goes dark, but I think once it does, it's going to be really hard to put it back together again.
Right. Yeah, because electronics is very energy intensive to produce, and it often has a very short life expectancy. Like, I talked to like chemists from AMD, and they told me that the half-life of a modern processor, this was back in the 2000s, was 7 years. So after 7 years, 50% of them are dead. And as an IT professional, I know that the half-life for hard drives is 4 years. So if someone is storing things on their hard drive, it's not really for the future. You have to print it out. If it's not printed out on paper, you're not going to have it in like a decade or two. All of that stuff is going to go corrupt, including any kind of CDs or anything like that. Now, we have also a YouTube listener, and they are wanted to chip in on the 2023 increasing global conflict and emerging power threats and things like that. And I just wanted to mention on that topic that, well, we do have the war in Ukraine, and I was thinking that this could be another symptom of catabolic capitalism, since they wanted to reduce the population, and they weren't able to do enough with the pandemic and the injections. And so now they've turned on the meat grinder, and they're trying to shove people into the meat grinder to exterminate them. But anyways, I know Phillip has his hand up. Go ahead, Phillip. Or Doone. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're muted.
This is Phillip. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. In addition to what Alex said there, which I think is perfect, spot on about the internet and information. And if we think about it slightly religiously for just a moment, but not too much. If we think about it, like the Tower of Babylon, is that it? The Tower of Babel? And that's what the internet is like. It's like you can speak any language in it, and it's just gigantic, humongous, built upon all these wires and circuits and diodes and microchips and whatever. And like what Andrew said there, that all of this stuff is still, no matter what, biodegradable. Entropy comes in. And my brother and I comically were sitting around talking about how he saved this movie, or he saved this song. And he said, hey, go put that movie in and let's watch it. So I got the movie, and it was something he recorded. And we put it in, and it didn't work. And he swore up a storm, and I laughed hysterically. And I'm like, see, there's nothing that's saved. And analogy slightly, at my older age here, I've tried to indicate to others that nothing survives. Everything goes under. That's not quite true, but things have survived for 2,000, 4,000, 10,000 years. But most of the things we all know in 20 or 40 years will absolutely not exist at all. And they'll pick up some little knick-knack here. Hey, have you ever heard this guy named Elvis? They thought a lot about him at that time. And even now, as I say these words, there's generations out and about in my world that have no idea who Elvis is. And so, but, okay, what else here? I want to study some more about what you said, your catabolic capitalism. And you don't need to expound on it right now, but I need to learn more about that. Okay, that's the end of this speech here. Let me mute then.
All right.
I think
I'd like to go back to
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, okay, Doone, go ahead.
thank you. Yeah, food forests are a great way of producing food without a lot of effort. In Australia, we call it syntropic agriculture, but I know that there's a guy in America named Mark Shepard who has written a book called Restoration Agriculture. And if anyone's interested in looking at that, I'm not sure what state he's in, but it's a fairly sort of temperate zone, like South Carolina or something like that. And he grows these forests of food in avenues, and in each avenue there's multi-stories of different plants, from sort of ground covers up through shrubs and trees growing out the top, and they're all food productive in terms of edible foods. And that's the way in which a lot of food can be produced with not a lot of effort, and probably a great way for much of the temperate zones of the world to end up at. So Mark Shepard, Restoration Agriculture.
Nice.
Yeah. There's a lot of great permaculture people like G.F. Lawton and if you just look up food forests or permaculture or syntropic agriculture, and you can often find someone that will be specific to your area. I know the Anastasia or the ringing cedars is good for kind of very like Siberian tropic, and also I do food forests, and so like you can do pine nuts and things like that. Though I have noticed that some of the permaculture people, they have not done like the calculations, and sometimes they're really big on animal agriculture, but it doesn't really make sense in if you're supporting a large number of people. Like animals should be mostly for the B vitamins or the EPA and the DHA, especially if you're growing like aquatic animals like crayfish. And then your protein would mostly come from beans or peas like that. Iver, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think the electric grid is what's really in trouble. I think, I heard, I know Alex was talking about it. I heard when we went to 5G, that's something like, it's like double or triple the amount of energy that it costs to do 4G. So we're sort of putting more and more and more onto this electric grid and expecting it to do more and more, especially, electric vehicles, etc. So I think what we're doing is we're pushing this electric grid until maybe, and it might not actually be that long. I mean, look at Duncan's Olduvai theory. The electric grid goes out, and then that's the end of all this like fun. You can have whatever you want, but if you can't plug it in, it doesn't work anymore. So I don't know. It'd be really nice if we could figure out a decentralized grid and figure out ways of making things work. But I think it's the world's largest and most complex machine and organization, and so I think it's going to be in trouble. I mean, there may be electricity around, but it's going to be microgrids or something, because keeping the whole thing going might be a bigger chore than we're all up for in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I know that there's a lot of modern utilities and like blenders and microwaves and things like that are very high in energy, and they basically can only function on a grid, and they you can't even run them off a generator. I know my aunt who was living in Ukraine was running with a generator, and she needed to have like a 10 kilowatt generator, and there was still some appliances that she couldn't run simply because they were too energy intensive. And yeah. So one of our chat people says South Africa is close to going dark, but I don't know if anyone has intel on that. We have 5 more minutes of here. If anyone wanted to say anything else on their mind before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll pipe in.
Go ahead.
I appreciate people talking about food forests. I'm going to have to leave shortly because for whatever reason, I still believe in engaging with my local community and politics. So I ended up on a committee here to raise somewhere between $40 to $50 million for our local Parks Department and Greenways system. It's a levy that we've done 4 times previously. But my participation in it this time, I really tried to get climate change and resiliency put into the last levy. But our stupid Parks Department is totally fixated on building pickleball courts and, swing sets and all sorts of AstroTurf ball fields, all the stuff that people want. They spend millions and millions of dollars on infrastructure that is ultimately not resilient or enduring as far as adapting to our climate. So this time around, I'm kind of insisting that they include food forests as an option. We have about 3,000 acres of parkland here, and the current policy is you can only plant native species, meaning in my case, fir trees and, just bushes and shrubs that are indigenous to the Pacific Northwest. And my argument is, we've got all these parks with manicured lawns that require maintenance and sometimes fertilizer. We really need to be planting more community gardens and food forests right now because those things take 10 years to mature.
Yeah. And Alex, I just wanted to address that because I've seen this a lot as well in the permaculture field that some people are really big on natives, but you have to take it into context of the fact that a few thousand years ago, it was all just ice and rock because it was under a glacier, and so everything is could be said to be invasive. And if you look at especially the Pacific Northwest, there's very few edible or useful plants, and because of this, the indigenous Northwest people were slave-based society, since they had to basically enslave large amounts of people to manage the few things that would work there, which was salmon. But if you are willing to be open and minded enough to grow other plants that can grow there, like oaks or and berries and fruit and nuts that provide food, then you could grow food, and that could lead to a lot less conflict and resource shortages. Like Quamash was one of their few staple crops that didn't require enslaving large numbers of people. Phillip, you want to say?
Actually, let's go to Alex first because he thought he might have to depart here. So,
okay,
let's
sure.
go to Alex.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I do need to leave in a few minutes. It was great to see all you guys. I'm going to scamper off to this meeting and see if I can piss off some elected officials and stir the pot a bit.
Yeah.
Well, too.
Yeah, you can tell them about giving everyone enough land to grow their own food and firewood.
Yes,
that's sure to raise some eyebrows.
They'll adopt that immediately.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Take care, guys.
Take care. All right. So yeah, we've got 30 seconds if anyone wants to say anything. Just open your mic and say it. Otherwise, I'll close us out for the session.
I was
had
thinking
some-
it was kind of fun that we can do this, and hopefully we can keep it up for a little while longer. It's sort of like old timey ham radio, but with pictures. So as long as we have the bandwidth, we can still see each other, right? From
Yeah,
anywhere around the world.
yeah, it's really wonderful. I agree. Yeah, and we'll probably do this again next month or earlier if Simon Michaud schedules something. But yeah, it's going to cut us any second now. So leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator. And remember that all is well and all will